morning, everybody. Welcome here live from the GCCM in Miami. And I would like to, first of all of you out there, big welcome from all of us here who are live here, the audience. Good morning, everybody. No, we can do this. Good morning, everybody. Oh, I love it. Me like that. Good. So good morning, everybody. We're going to talk about the messaging market trends in this year, which is only leaves us with, 20 plus days, right? But we have here, first of all, very nice lady and a couple of guys around the table who are going to discuss this. And I'll give them a quick minute to introduce themselves and let's say what they have to say about themselves and their company. So Florence.
Florence Sébastien. I'm managing director for FSE Consulting, and I help companies to find synergies and potential synergies and profitable.
Especially profitable. Bernardo, buongiorno.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Bernardo Fonseca. I'm the business unit wholesale director for Go for Mobility. We are a company based in Lisbon, and we do bulk SMS, voice solutions, and also value-added services. Thank you for the invitation to be here.
Thank you so much, and good having you as well. Igor, good morning.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Igor Skutsinya. I work for Lang Telecom. I'm a RCS team leader and a business development manager for anti-fraud products.
Thank you, and good having you here. And let's go to the UK, to David. Welcome, David. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good morning, Miami. First of all, apologies that I can't be there in person. Look forward to meeting and catching up with old friends and peers and colleagues in the new year. I'm with Twilio. We're one of the world's leading customer engagement platforms on a mission to help brands connect with consumers better. I work with partnerships.
Thank you so much, and good having you, David. Thank you. And next time you'll be around, right? That's a promise. And last but not least, Ricardo, iBASIS. First of all, thank you very much for sponsoring this panel session here live in Miami. And please.
Good morning to all. Good afternoon for the ones that are in other parts of the world that is not Miami, which is great weather, by the way. My name is Ricardo Martins. I'm VP for messaging sales in iBASIS, which is an independent telco operator, and I'm based out of Lisbon as well.
Thank you very much, and Ricardo, if I may invite you to go to the desk to have a nice keynote presentation from iBASIS. And in the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, while Ricardo is preparing, talking about the messaging market trends in 2021, but trends again, it's more for what's coming and what's out there. So we're happy to listen to Ricardo and iBASIS.
So again, good morning to all. I think I'm quite excited to be here with this great panel and be surrounded by experts on the matter, which I'm not. So that's the first disclaimer. I think the idea is really to share a bit our view about the market, but as well to trigger the discussion. And please take the next slides as some ideas that we put on the table and to ignite the discussion that we will have afterwards. So the first step, probably just before we jump into the topic, just to give you a quick highlight of about iBASIS. So iBASIS, as the new iBASIS, as we like to say, the journey of the new iBASIS started around 3 years ago when Tofan Group acquired the wholesale activity of Altis Group with the acquisition of the wholesale business of SFR, Mio, and Altis Dominicana. And just afterwards, we also acquired iBASIS, which was a company which is 25 years in the market. And last but not least, we also acquired the wholesale operations of NOS in Portugal. And basically, this strategy of consolidation, it's basically the main dogma of the new iBASIS, which because we really believe on having an independent telco operator providing services, and some of the partners probably they have the needs to focus on their retail businesses, and wholesale is an activity that needs scale and is in certain products are not growing. So having the option to partner with iBASIS something that on our side, it's kind of our business model, and we have our machine ready to incorporate these operations. As I said, we have been around for quite some time. I think when iBASIS started, we were the pioneers of the voice over IP, and the innovation is on our DNA, and we are very proud of what we have been doing on LTI, on security, on IoT, and we are ready for the next 25 years. In terms of, let's say, we have as I said, we are an independent telco player. We have a wide portfolio that is covering mainly the needs of our partners and customers, from voice to messaging to IoT, cloud, mobile roaming, which is, I would say it's kind of a standard profile, but it's with a lot of dedication and effort to serve our customers and serve our partners. Going back to the messaging, or stepping into the messaging, I think I think the challenge for this session was to identify the trends for 2021, which we know that has been a quite strange year, because we thought that maybe the pandemic was on 2020, but at the end 2021 was also we have to deal with it. I think we can have different statements about, and there's multiple qualified people that speak about this market. But I think one thing we all agree is that the market is still growing, and it's good to be in a growing market. I think we all feel that. Either you measure it in volumes, in revenues, in the spending that enterprises do on this channel. You can look at different angles, but I do believe that, or we do believe that this is a growing business, and it will continue to grow the next few years. In which extent, at what pace, it's probably something that we will discuss further on. As I said, we cannot talk about trends without speaking about the pandemic. It comes with the topic. Let's say one of the things we would like to draw the attention would be to how was the effect of the pandemic, right? I think now we can say that there was a global increase of volumes. That's why we say that the market is increasing, but at the same time, it was not uniform across the different businesses and the different verticals. So, and maybe this will be further discussed, but at least we have the view that some verticals were really boosted and affected by and accelerated by the COVID, like vaccination, the health services. I think we all got an SMS to confirm our booking day for taking the shot for the ones that are vaccinated. But at the same time, the online, the digital commerce, the gaming, all this, we saw a boost and the increase of the usage of the messaging. At the same time, traveling, booking of Airbnb and hotels, logistics, I think it was affected. Therefore, the effect of this pandemic, I think, is quite random or not uniform, heterogenic, and this is something that triggers the actions for how do you recover it, and depending on the vertical, on the business we are talking about, the starting point and the next steps are different. In any case, our view is that there was really the creation of a growth trend, and the digital transformation, accelerated all the process. So something that we saw that probably it will happen in 4 or 5 years, it happened in 4 or 5 months, and it's clear to us that everyone wants to, connect in a simple, effective way. Either end users, either brands, either enterprises, and I think it's upon us, which are upon the ecosystem, to deliver a positive answer to this challenge. And it's also clear to us that messaging is part of that solution. Everyone has a mobile phone, so everyone can be reached through a message. Can discuss if it's SMS A2P or RCS or other type of channel, but clearly messaging is part of the solution. Again, messaging has been so far SMS A2P. The gold old SMS that turned, I don't know, 29 or 30 a few days ago, last week. But there's a lot of buzz about other channels, and I think that will be also a topic on the discussion. So, and my question is, are we talking about one channel, multiple channels, omni-channel? What's the difference? And I will be curious to see the feedback from my colleagues on this. It's clear that the solution on the theoretical point of view, it works. And the PowerPoint looks very nice. It simplifies the customer engagement. It simplifies, it creates more use cases. So, to use CPaaS or an omni-channel view to address the needs that the enterprises have to connect with customers and the need that customers have to connect with enterprises and brands makes all the sense. Now, how do we implement this? That's the $1 million question. And we are talking about, brands, customers, enterprises, but I think we also have to talk about the MNOs because they are an important part of this chain. And without the MNOs, the messaging channel doesn't work. And if we look at it, at least on our side, we see that there are a couple of concerns that they should be addressed. The first one is related with fraud. So we still see on the market a lot of SMS being terminated via non-legal channels, and this is not only potential of revenue, let's say, a revenue loss, but mostly also a fraud issue and a security issue. And it's for us, it's important, or it's clear that it's key that the MNOs, they adopt messaging anti-fraud solutions to tackle this issue. And that by doing that, they should also do it in a very smart way. Again, security, anti-fraud is key for the credibility of the SMS channel. With all the new use cases that we saw popping up in during these 2 years, banking traffic, authentication, they are becoming critical. And if the channel is not reliable, then it generates an issue of trust that I think all the players in the ecosystem should think about. At the same time, this is often a question of revenue. The MNOs tend to see this as a revenue potential, which in fact it is, but it should be done on a very smart way, because not all use cases should have the same treatment. This is an ecosystem. There is a balance that should be kept in the same way that we say that it's not acceptable that there is fraud and that the MNOs are not getting the proper revenue out of the service they are rendering. There is a limit on the price. And I think there's a lot of discussions in the market about the current level of price about the SMS A2P. And this has an impact on all the other topics, on the alternative channels, on the fraud. And I think that's part of the solution to have a smart strategy in terms of pricing. In this case, I have to say that iBASIS is doing a lot of work, and I would like to, being in Miami, being here with a lot of Latin players, I could not highlight the partnership we did with Claro Ecuador to monetize the network, to protect the network, It's a project that is live for now for a month, and it has been very successful. And I think, without going into details, I think it's a good example of a smart monetization project. And I'm happy to share details after this workshop. But I think that's the example we put on the industry, and that we want to replicate with more partners, and that should be followed by the ecosystem. In a nutshell, I think to anticipate the coming questions, I think we know this is a market that is growing, and it's very good to be on a market that is growing. We have other markets. I don't think GCCM is also here for voice, which is maybe not growing as much as messaging, and this is good for all of the players in these markets. We need to address the enterprise requirements. I think David early on mentioned about customer engagement, which we think it's definitely the key question that has to be addressed. And this solution comes from this ecosystem. The answer is not from one party, it's from all of us, addressing all the needs from the different angles. And that's it. So thank you all, and pass the word to you.
Thank you so much, Ricardo. And please remain there, if I may ask you,
Sure.
Because first of all, again, congratulations with the 25 anniversary of iBASIS. And even if it's a bit orange, I'm from the Netherlands as well, so it's a bit on my heart and close to my heart. And second of all, with the monetization project with Claro, and I know that, as you mentioned, that hopefully, let's say, more MNOs will follow and come to iBASIS to see the advantage of going in such a partnership, because it helps and it keeps away of a lot of troubles in the market. So congratulations on that one as well. But do we have any questions for Ricardo? You have been so clear. You've been so clear.
It's the advantage of having the first presentation after the party of last night. Right?
Shh. We briefed each other not to discuss this, right? Anyway, but one question from me, Ricardo, if you allow me. If you can say it in one word, what would be, let's say, your messaging landscape trend you are seeing, actually, not only today, but maybe also in the future? One.
Growth.
The growth. That is the thing which will...
Yes. We are seeing this growth, and at the same time, we know that the number of enterprises or businesses using SMS is still far from the potential. Some studies that probably 10 to 15% of the businesses.
Yeah, we saw already something in your presentation.
So I think the potential is huge there. I think the improvement that are being done on the current solutions, omnichannel is an example, RCS maybe another example, will improve the customer engagement and make this channel, the SMS or the messaging, as a valuable solution for the enterprises. So I think that the two factors combined, so the increase of players jumping into this channel, when you compare it with email, has nothing to do in terms of customer engagement, right? Everyone has a mobile phone on his hands. So I think the potential is huge. So the first word is growth.
Okay. Thank you very much. If I may invite you, and thank you for your presentation. Ricardo Martins from iBASIS. So bumping in, Florence, if I may start with you. We were talking about trends and what's out there, and from your point of view, and maybe also from a different angle, because we see a lot of other stuff happening as well in the messaging market. What would be, let's say, your takeaway to say, or characteristic, this is how the landscape looks today?
SMS is still the king and the best way to reach the customer, but the trend will be CPaaS and omnichannel, because it's really important to have many ways to reach the customer, and because at the end of the day, we need to reach this customer. And another topic will be on the M&A point of view. Perspectives are huge because there is so much to do regarding CPaaS and true omni-channel players, because there are so many fake players. And yeah, the opportunities on M&A perspective seems huge.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think you do agree that with me, like what Ericsson just and Vonage, I think it's a biggie again in the market on the M&A side. Bernardo, from your point of view, can you just characterize a little bit the landscape? What do you see? Not to go too much in deep because we do this later, but just a quick overview from your side. Thank you.
So I think that we came from a world where campaigns were just based on SMS and email. And as marketing managers and the company needs start to evolve, we needed to engage customers in a different way with proper flows, definition of audience segments and so on. And this created the need for platforms to be able to create audiences and sustain a pass between the first point when the customer touches our brand until the end point that it can go to a purchasing scenario, it can go to a customer care scenario. And this created the need for platforms to evolve to different channels, SMS, WhatsApp for Business, and any other elements that will help these type of use cases. And then, of course, the industry divided itself into, am I going to provide a platform, CPaaS, for developers to build these scenarios for our customers, or am I going to build these multi-channel platforms to offer to the marketing managers to set up the campaigns? And I think we are seeing that two ways going forward. All platforms that just have SMS or email are not going to be competitive anymore, and this is what has been happening. And I think SMS does not suffer from the appearance of use cases with WhatsApp. Actually, it will grow because SMS would not permit chat, and now you are able to, confirmations, finalization of scenarios at the end of each of these flows. We have a lot to grow. And as Ricardo said, only 15 to 18% of the small medium businesses are using messaging for marketing purposes. So we still have a lot to educate and grow.
Thank you, Igor, and thank you for flying in so long from Russia to be here. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
What's your take on the landscape? What do you see? Maybe you can tip a little bit on the RCS or on the fraud side.
Yes, I'd like to kind of add to the points that are already being said. As for increased volumes, we expect RCS to contribute to that growth. Even though messaging is far from that potential, RCS would not only increase the overall messaging traffic volume, but also it would have operators introduce new RCS solutions into their networks. For example, the one like we are building currently is the RCS gateway, so that all the regional operators could be connected through one window to the rest of the RCS world. And also, I would say, I know for a fact that some operator groups are working on their internal RCS hubs that would allow them to seamlessly just exchange RCS traffic between different operators in different countries. So that's another thing that we see. And also regarding anti-fraud solutions, I would say that the voice anti-fraud solutions are still very young. They are in their infancy, and SMS solutions are, so to speak, even smaller. So we expect a lot more SMS anti-fraud solutions in the market as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Igor. David, back to you, over to you to the UK. I mean, Twilio. Talking about CPaaS and everything, you're the guy. So tell us, what's the landscape? What do you see around you?
Thank you. Yeah, three key trends I've picked up on this year. Obviously, the acceleration in price inflation in the SMS market, the SMS A2P market, just to clarify. We all know that's happening. I think we all expect that to continue. A second one that maybe isn't talked about as much, that we certainly have seen an uptick in 2021 on, is control of messaging, whether that's from regulators, whether that's from mobile carriers themselves. But SMS started, obviously it started as a person-to-person protocol, but even the applications-person SMS market started as a very open, and as Ricardo said in the presentation, kind of simplicity of use. You can plug in, and all that was needed was APIs, which is kind of where Twilio comes from. Put an API up in front of that, and businesses can go globally without having to talk to anyone. One of the challenges we see today coming in is that it's not possible to plug and play these days, because mobile carriers want to know who the end customer is before they can start sending messages. And whilst that will be a feature of the new rich messaging world that we're moving into with the likes of RCS and WhatsApp for Business, we hadn't had that to date on SMS, and this year we've really seen an acceleration in that. And that certainly is going to be a key challenge for the continued growth of the SMS market in the future, I think. And then the third one really is the real emergence, and not just talk, but the real emergence of new channels that provide either enhancements or alternatives to SMS. So we talk a lot about RCS business messaging as a kind of a next evolution of SMS, with the rich features and the enhanced engagement that comes with, similar with WhatsApp for Business and various other social networks that are launching their own application-to-person channels. But also, I think probably one of the bigger threats to SMS is going to come from where phone number verification, authentication is going to move to. I don't believe that's going to be moving across in great numbers to these richer channels. I think there are new technologies coming out, such as, for example, Mobile Connect, which was the GSMA standard for silent mobile verification. There are a number of companies out there with solutions that mimic that, with a much better user experience, significantly better security, and something of a greenfield landscape that allows us to reset some of the things we've got wrong in SMS. Eric, interesting you talk about CPaaS. One of the things I have seen this year is maybe a bit of a misunderstanding about what's required to become a CPaaS player. Twilio is 7,000 people now, and a significant number of those people are a significant support layer. It's not just having a messaging platform, standing up APIs and calling yourself a CPaaS player. There are a number of layers in that, and that's perhaps something that's worth talking to.
Thank you very much, and thank you for setting the page, because this is where I would like to go, because there is some misunderstanding in the market. What is CPaaS? What is it really about? Or should we talk about SaaS? So maybe Ricardo, I mean, you tipped on in your presentation also already a little bit on it. So let's have a quick dive in that, just for everybody and the audience to set it clear for once and for all, because we can talk about it a lot. But can you set the pace? What is CPaaS and what's real CPaaS?
Yeah, I have to say that I agree with David. So CPaaS is a bit more than just connecting an API to an SMS platform and to have connectivity behind. So that's of course essential, but the customer service, the customer experience, it's absolutely key to have CPaaS. And I think that's probably that's why I think I mentioned the multi-channel. The fact that a player enables multi-channel does not classify that player as an omni-channel or a CPaaS, because it's all about with the customer experience, the integration, and the simplicity of use. So iBASIS has the ambition to become. We are on our way. We are working hardly on that product. But I agree with David that a lot of players on the market, they call themselves a CPaaS provider, which they are really not.
Actually not. Bernardo?
I think it's a very good point from David. So, for example, many people ask, is Go4Mobility CPaaS player? And I say, no, I'm not. CPaaS stands for Communication Platform as a Service, which means that basically, and David and Ricardo, correct me if you think I'm wrong, but basically you position yourself to be a provider for IT developers to create something and create the flows and the necessary mechanisms for marketing flows, etc., and all types of solutions. So when we talk with Twilio or with Sinch, we see that they have a layer there that actually enables people and developers to build something, and they pick up several elements. It can be the IDs, it can be messaging APIs to build those flows. You know, the most typical one that probably everybody knows is Twilio Flex for the call centers, which is very powerful. Then where we stand, for example, Go for Mobility, is that we provide the likes of Twilio, Cinch, and iBASIS with the numbering, with some APIs, with some developments, with some messaging destinations, so they can feed their CPaaS platforms to do something else. And that is a very different segment that you are addressing when you decide to be a CPaaS. Then on the multi-channel, you are creating a platform that will serve the brands and the marketing managers, where they have the chance to build engagement flows with their customers, to actually perform campaigns, being SMS, email campaigns. When you go into the store, you identify that there's a new customer there through some type of HTTP technology with Wi-Fi. You get the message, you start a flow with your customer. You know, there are several type of things, and then those are basically marketing platforms which allow the marketing managers to build campaigns over email, etc. All the multi-channels that you have there. And I think this is the separation that I see. CPaaS platform is not something easy. You know, the amount of IT developers that you need to have behind security flows, all these type of things requires quite an investment. Go for Mobility is not in that space as a CPaaS platform. We are a wholesale provider with several elements for CPaaS players. And on the other side, we have multi-channel platform with our brand Sendit that actually serves the enterprise and the corporate market, the marketing managers of Zara, of BMW, etc., to build their campaign flows to address their customers. I think the difference is here.
So that's clearly said. Igor, you want to add something to it?
In pretty much all the bases were covered. It's just that I would say that this opportunity of some businesses simply not having enough resources to create their own CPaaS platforms is kind of an opportunity for historically telecom operators and telecom like wholesale providers to become solution vendors, to venture into a totally new world, because they understand that they have the product that some other companies would like to acquire, and this is some opportunity it may use.
Now, David, moving on a little bit. Multi-channel, omni-channel. First, give me the difference and share with us your knowledge with the audience. What's the difference? And then I would like to understand what are the challenges you see on the omni-channel.
Funny enough, I was at an omni-channel event last week, so there's a lot of discussion on this, and I think it's an interesting area. In terms of where communication is going compared to where we are today. Right now, we have broadly one primary way that we communicate with, brands communicate with users, and that's SMS, for example, or it's email. It's typically not a combination. In this new omni-channel world, and we can define it however we like, it's a series of ways that we can communicate with users. There will not be one dominant channel that I see. There had been talk about, there has been talk about RCS as the replacement for SMS. I certainly don't believe that that's going to be the case. I think, in the case of RCS, it will be a channel that plays alongside other ones in the A2P engagement space. As I talked, as I mentioned in the kind of trends, it's not also just about rich messaging channels that is where kind of communication and interactions going with consumers. It's also around how we solve for the same business problems in a different way, such as I mentioned, Mobile Connect. So that for me is, I think, where multi-channel it's going to be driven by the fact that we have a number of these new channels out there. There's no ubiquitous reach in any of them, and I don't know if there ever will be, even with RCS. Even if Apple gets on board, there's still a lot that needs to happen for RCS to have that universal adoption that SMS has. So it will always play as part of other channels. I think the number of directions that we're going is so vast. We've got, you know, new A2P channels such as all, you know, the rich messaging ones, RCS, WhatsApp, so on and so forth. We've also got a huge growth, and I find this really interesting, in person to application native channels. And these are things like business messages, Apple Business Chat, Instagram. And what's really interesting about those channels is that's where the consumer is already engaged. Application to person sucks because the consumer isn't engaged with the brand is trying to engage them. With a P2A channel, whether it's Instagram, you're already following the brand and you're messaging them, and there's a reason you're messaging them. You're already engaged, and you're more likely to be doing something. For me, I think that becomes interesting, that consumer engagement doesn't necessarily shift from email or SMS or, you know, wherever it is today, to RCS and WhatsApp for business. Potentially, it skips that and goes straight to things like Apple Business Chat and business messages from Google.
Okay, thank you. Ricardo?
Never easy to speak after David.
It has never been, by the way.
No, but I think there's an important point, is the preference of the customer. And I think, let's say, an omni-channel should be able to identify the preference of the customer and, you know, match, you know, through algorithms or through whatever artificial intelligence, that you like to be contacted by WhatsApp, but when you are on the weekends, but on the during the week you prefer SMS, or because you are when you are in meetings, that it's better email or what. So the knowledge about the preference of the customer, and that's also ties with this, the difference between the P2A and the A2P, because the customer requires to engage with to contact the brand. And again, so far it has been one-way communication, you know, and it's, you know, OTPs, notifications, marketing campaigns. I think the trend, you know, can be, and the growth can be from conversational messaging, and these rich, you know, these rich channels like RCS or the P2A. You know, it's all about, you know, giving the ability to the customer to contact the brand and to interact with the brand, and, you know, then have a back and forth communication, because when the customer wants, via the means that the customer prefer, and that's, I think that's the big challenge that today it's not yet addressed.
Okay, please.
We spoke about trends, and I would mention the trend of the people from voice coming towards messaging, and voice or messaging are commodities. And the big difference, what David and Ricardo mentioned, is that you cannot consider the relation and the conversation with the final user as a commodity. You need to check what are the wishes of the customer and to respect the customer. And when we see the people from voice coming towards messaging, there is a big difference of approach. And yeah, there is some people from voice do not have the same approach and do not respect the final user as the people from originally from messaging respect the final user. That was
okay. Igor?
And if I may add to a couple of things that already said, I would like to give a pat on the back on the good old SMS. I mean, we're talking all about other channels, how good they are, what kind of opportunities they present, but still, there is SMS is still number one in terms of A, delivery, and B, the attention that users still give to it. I mean, the majority, like 91 or 92% of received SMS are still read within first 3 minutes. So this is a very significant factor, at least for SMS to be used as a secondary channel. If some other channel, which is a lot less costly and perhaps a lot more fun to use, is not delivering the necessary message, then SMS could be a backup. And another thing that I would like to highlight is that there is a direct relation between the cost of SMS, or at least the trend of cost of SMS, and the acceptance of those alternative channels. I mean, in the US, SMS are very, very cheap, and the SMS is very, very spread out, so it's widely used. Well, in Russia, the SMS prices, I mean, they are high enough, but they get higher and higher several times every year. So being the home of very strong OTT players in terms of VK and Telegram, we see a lot of authentication and notification traffic migrating there. So this is something that should be taken into account.
Okay, another?
No, I think everything has been said. The point that David made on the channels on Instagram and all the new social media are actually extremely important, because we tend to forget and go into what we can offer the customer, and sometimes not thinking on what they are already using, why are they already using that. So I think the challenge will be mainly on the platforms that need to serve the marketing managers, that need to build their campaigns and engagement with their customers, because there is a lot of diversity coming into market. If I speak with Igor, for example, probably for him, Viber is much more important than WhatsApp. Depends on market to market. You see in the center of Europe, Telegram coming up. So I think we'll need to adapt a lot into the type of platforms that, I won't call it platforms, but channels that we want to serve our customers. And on our side, we'll need to make our multi-channel. I like to call it multi-channel, because I think omni-channel is a bit of a utopic name, but we'll need to adapt and constantly be changing to be able to serve customers, you know, marketing agencies and brands, that how they engage with their customers. But SMS will always be there.
Okay, thank you. Now, we mentioned already a couple of times RCS. I really would like to know a little bit more about RCS. David, can you, I mean, how rich is RCS? Is it going to happen? I mean, pre-pandemic, I think about, what is it, Feb 2020, we were sort of on the verge of, you know, people were talking about it a lot. I see this, I mean, RCS moving in again. Some people are afraid of it. Some people, they tell me, Eric, it's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. Other people say, you know, it is just another channel, and it will be there. It's there. It's absolutely cool. So lead the way a little bit. What is it? What can we expect?
Sure. I was fortunate to spend 6 months building channel partnerships at my previous company around RCS. So this is a topic very close to my heart. And I do genuinely believe that whilst it's going to be part of the ecosystem and not the ecosystem, it is going to be a strong part of it. In terms of what is RCS, for those who aren't so aware, RCS, the rich communication service, it's very simply a rich messaging channel that sits on your native messaging app. And that's the key differentiator that RCS has over WhatsApp and Facebook and some of these others. The communication is in your native inbox, whether you're using Google Messages. Ultimately, if Apple ever decides to turn on RCS because it's baked into the latest iOS, then it will sit within your native messaging inbox, which is almost always in the first page. So it has that slight advantage in terms of potential engagement from users. What is interesting that a lot of people don't realize is that the way that RCS has been constructed, there are very much two sides of it. There's RCS, and that's purely a person-to-person protocol. It's iMessage for Android, very simply. Enables 2 Android users who are RCS enabled to exchange messages, pictures, video, media over IP, avoiding SMS charges and particularly avoiding MMS charges. The second side of it is the application to person layer. Unlike SMS, which was never designed with A2P in mind, RCS has had A2P as a consideration since the very early days. And what people refer to as A2P RCS, or what certainly people like Google refer to as RCS business messaging, it's a very separate area of the technology. And that's really, you know, as I said earlier, it really is just, you know, A2P over the RCS channel. Now there is potential for P2A as well. There's a bit of work going on from a few players in the market to create bot directories that would enable that. But ostensibly, it's a way that RCS business messaging is a way that brands can have a rich, can create a rich experience with their users. Allows brands to send pictures and videos and cards and carousels. So you could be receiving an RCS message from Levi's jeans. Would you like to see some jeans that we think you'd like? You can create suggested replies. So rather than me having to reply to Levi's yes or no, I can click a button that says yes or no. So easier journey. They can then present me with a carousel. I can flick through, okay, 501s, 505s, whatever. You can even then integrate transactions in time. So actually, where RCS business messaging's potential really lies is moving the entire consumer interaction away from the brand's own surface, such as their app or their website, into the messaging client. So Levi's, I could buy jeans through my messaging client. And I think where the big opportunity really comes is for the mobile operators. This is really the one shot they have at remaining relevant in the consumer to brand interaction space. I mentioned earlier, and I'm a very passionate believer that a lot of engagement communication is going to move to these native P2A channels where the user is already engaged. Users are not engaged with mobile operators by and large. They are engaged with Instagram and Google search and Apple search. And I don't know if I see a place for carriers in that space so much. Maybe in voice, and actually it's interesting, voice got mentioned. Voice innovation is really interesting as well, and that's a topic for another time perhaps. But certainly, I think for me, RCS business messaging, where we could go with this is bringing that entire experience and ultimately transaction into the native messaging app. There is one challenge that I see coming, and this is not limited just to RCS business messaging. It's also for the kind of the IP messaging space. We have a number of rich messaging channels: WhatsApp for Business, Facebook Messenger, Line, Kakao, WeChat. There's fragmentation, and because these channels by design, the channel owner, whether that's Google or Facebook or WeChat, they want to have some control over the experience. They don't want their users being spammed. You can't just plug and play as a brand. You do need to go through some level of verification to make sure that you are who you say you are and the experience is good for the user on that surface. I mentioned in one of the challenging trends that we've seen in SMS is an increase in control, and that we as an industry are not really set up to deal with that at the moment. That exists in the IP messaging world, that a brand who wants to launch an omni-channel, multi-channel campaign needs to go get permission to do that from a whole bunch of social apps. It's the same in RCS, because it's a carrier channel. It will be carriers that sell this. It will not be Google in the long run. It will not be anyone else. It will be carriers, just like SMS is today. The challenge is that we get, a brand then if a brand wants to launch a global campaign, they have to go and seek out 1,500 or so verification requests, across the globe, and that's not scalable. So that's something that we as an industry have to solve for. I think there's, I have a certain opinion on that, but I'm interested to hear I'm particularly interested to hear Lank's position on this. I know you're very active in the space, and if you see a way that we can solve the verification challenge.
Cool. Thank you, David. So I think, Igor, you're challenged.
Yeah, sure. I'd like to capitalize what the panel said earlier and what David kind of touched, is that the operators would be the companies that kind of welcome brands and users into RCS, and being like used as a network provider or just generic service providers, they got to become a lot more personal with their customers, become engaging, and it would not only that, but the whole RCS rollout process would require lots of planning, would require a lot of international cooperation, would require lots of budgeting, and most of all, it would require a lot of management education to make it work. But I see that now there could be the only way, or one of the very few ways, to break this trend of traffic going from SMS to OTT. So it's our position is like that, and we think that it's a risk. Obviously, in this economy, in this day and age, nobody wants to invest a lot. Nobody wants to get committed into something that may not work, maybe. But we think that this risk is calculated. and we are willing to take it, and we are encouraging our partners to do the same.
Do see, thank you, and you do see a lot of. I mean, let's talk about the big guys. You know, the oranges of this world, and I know them a little bit, but you know, the investments they're making. But the thing is, guys, what I would like to know, is it going to happen? David, quickly, yes or no?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely they will. And to be honest, they have. And if they don't, Google will do it for them, because
there you go.
Google's reason for being,
push them. They will
well,
push
yeah,
them.
no, but it's not even that. Google's reason for being in the RCS space is actually about the experience on Android. It's about creating the same experience that you have on an iPhone. So that's why they're doing it, and they will do it for that reason. And they're already doing it. You know, if you look at RCS business messaging, there are now 10 or so countries where you can reach all the major carriers for a campaign. 75% of that reach has been lit up by Google.
Okay, all right. Let's move on. Ricardo, again, monetization, you know, and the project you have for Claro. Fraud is a big ticket item there. So how do you see, let's say, just a quick generic thing, because it's we have to address it in this panel. Fraud is an issue. So how can we tackle it? How should we tackle it?
Yeah, I think it's an issue because it's credibility of the industry that is at stake. The success of the SMS or message as a channel is there because, you know, end users and brands, they trust initially in mobile operators, but they trust on the SMS channel. I think this happens on SMS, but also happens on the new channels. So they all have to address this concern. On the SMS, because it has been there for quite some time, you know, the fraud issues are more known, and you know, the fact that I think 70% by the end of this year, 75% of the mobile operators will have an anti-fraud solution in place, shows that there is an awareness. And I think our role is a lot to do as well with education around what type of frauds exists, what type of, because the use cases become more complex. There is more usage about the service, so the fraud also increases. That's natural law. So what I think the first step is a lot of education. So the NOS have to be aware that there is a fraud issue, and not some, you know, monetization is important, but fraud protection and the protection of the network and the end users is also very critical. They have to be willing to invest, you know, solution, resources, in the project, into implementing on their network solutions that can protect their customers. Then I think, you know, initiatives like the registration of the sender IDs, and it's, as David was saying, is creating a pain because the industry was not used to it, but it's a result of behavior, and it's self-regulation, because worse than self-regulation is regulation from the regulatory bodies, and we need to make sure that this is under control, because this at the end affects it. So I think what happened in UK, it's happening in other markets, but the registration of the sender IDs, that's an important initiative. And also put our actions where our words are. You know, if we are against fraud, if we are against rape, we are investing in protecting the channel, then on the day-to-day, we should act in the province. I think that's also very important.
Well, you know, and in my, I mean, I go back in telcos almost 30 years, and I know, guys, you were not even born when I started. But let's not go the voice way, because we know what happened in voice, and it would be really a pity if that would happen. David, you should agree with me, I guess, right? If we go that same way, I think.
Well, I completely agree. I think we're already heading in that direction. And the point I made in the trends that we're seeing an increase in control from carriers and regulators is a direct is a direct consequence of the fraud that's been happening in the industry for many years. And whilst it might be a short-term boost to volumes, in some cases, it certainly is long-term. You know, it's not something that's positive for anyone in the ecosystem.
No, there you go. Igor, I mean, I know you're leading with Lunk, the everything about fraud as well. So
Yes.
what's your take on it?
I would say that obviously fraud is a problem. Fraud in messaging is going along with the volume, and the fraud in voice is sadly a very large problem as well. I think that obviously the solutions that are being provided would get better and better. We are introducing a new technology into the market, and obviously lots of other players are also developing their own solutions. I would say that kind of coming back to what David just said about voice, I mean, being decreasing, one small adjustment that I would say is that even though the volumes are decreasing, the amount of users are decreasing even faster. So average revenue per user in some regions is getting up, which makes the engagement to that service a little more lucrative from business standpoint. But of course, the trend for voice going down is still there. As for, that's I think that's about it.
Okay, Bernardo, you want to add something to it?
Sure. So fraud is a concern, and I'm more concerned when regulators and operators start to want to create rules that they think that will solve the problem. I think markets that go into pre-approval of sender registrations and so on is not the right path. We saw what happened in the Emirates, and suddenly, you know, campaigns were not possible to send anymore. We play in markets where pre-registration of senders is necessary, and actually I don't think it's really the solution to go that way. I think self-regulation is always the best option, and basically with proper algorithms on your SMS gateways, you can identify fraud properly and you can block certain trends and so on. There's also a perception we need to address with the politicians and regulators, which is because of the buzz of telecommunications and the digital world, everybody thinks that fraud is much bigger in the SMS world than, for example, it is on the normal world. And I think it was in Berlin we discussed, I showed some numbers for Portugal and Spain, and basically you have this type of logistic fraud on SMS where basically they convince you to pay €2 because there's a package somewhere waiting for you, while, for example, the clerk bank fraud in Portugal and Spain is thousands and thousands of euros every year, and it's much more harmful, and both of them always hit less educated people on the digital channel or less educated people on the overall society. And I think regulators and governments should worry more about people's education, because that's what actually in the end avoids you from being able to defend yourself from fraud. And on our side, on the industry, we should work together with carrier community or MEF to provide a booklet of solutions that we can implement ourselves to avoid fraud, but definitely not sender registration. It's something that we do. For example, in Portugal, Spain, or Mozambique, what we do is, for example, companies that we trust, and there are 3 companies here that we trust, we have dynamic senders. They can send whatever they want. But I'm not opening, for example, the sender of banks or the tax authority to any new player that connects to my SMS gateway. And that's already self-regulation that we are doing. And I think that's where we need to work on, is basically on finding rules together, write them down, and work on that path, and then advertise it and show it to our regulators and the governments that we are actually working better like this.
Okay, yeah, just show the proof and don't screw up yourself. That's actually I think the key message. So coming a bit to the end, guys. What can we expect? Well, what's out there? Maybe Florence, if I can start off with you. How do you see the future? I mean, your crystal ball.
In 2 words, I will come back to my first position regarding M&As and yeah, because the market has to be regulated and many acquisitions will occur and that will clean perhaps the market.
Okay, let's see if that happens. Bernardo?
I think it's an exciting world and a lot of new channels, a lot of companies that still need to be educated to move into the digital world. So I think we'll have a lot of growth in the messaging world. Voice is going to uptake again. So I think we are going to have some golden years coming ahead. I'm very positive.
Well, there was once a very long time ago an operator who said the future is bright, right? So, Igor, tell me what's your takeaway?
I think that the future, just like anything in life, the future would belong to those that act, not wait for something fall from the sky magically. In terms of anti-fraud, obviously the operators that would engage a lot more in anti-fraud activities and do more against fraud would be better off than those that sit idle. And the same thing would happen in RCS, as Google shown in the most direct way possible, that when you do things, you kind of shape the reality for the others. And I think this is the stance that operators could actually accept and be more active as to how they want it to be, how they want the market to look, and just to invest more resources just to make sure that their expectations and their vision is made into reality.
Okay, thank you. David, what's the outlook? What's your outlook?
I'm going to sum it up, I think, in 2 words, which are, for me, I think the words for next year. One is fragmentation, which is both a blessing and a potential curse. And I think the second one is engagement. It's all about engagement.
Okay, thank you. Famous last words, Ricardo.
Yeah, I'm actually curious on the impact of 5G. To see how this will enable a faster adoption of RCS. Because there are more things connected with IoT boost. What will be the impact of this IoT boost on the messaging? So I'm curious, and this should happen next year, not in 5 years. Then for the rest of what we've been talking here, I still think that the Google SMS will be the driver. Then and things like fraud and the investment of having a SMS firewall in place to control fraud. It's maybe not so fashion, not so rich in terms of customer engagement, but it's kind of the basics. If you don't have the basics, you cannot do an upgrade, right? So, and I think the world is not all at the same pace. Maybe for the States and for Europe, RCS is the next big thing, but maybe on other regions, we are still, we need to protect the networks, install firewall, prevent fraud, educate people. So I think we need to work as an ecosystem, and iBASIS is a global player. So we need to work in different layers and different priorities, pushing all the balls towards goal. But and that's why we are in this industry, why it's challenging. But we always have an optimistic view.
Okay, thank you. With those optimistic words, I would like to end this session, unless somebody from the audience has a question for this panel. You were more than clear, so congrats on this one. So I would like to thank you all, and thank you out there as well for listening in to us here live here from the GCCM. And David, hugs to the UK, and hope to see you soon, my friend.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me, everyone.
Of course, thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
And Igor, Bernardo, Florence, and Ricardo and iBASIS, thank you very much for organizing this and being with us here, and audience, thank you so much. Have a great day. All right. Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.